Hi everyone, it's Lee here from Yorkshire AV, and today we're going to be taking a little bit of a look at the RS150B from HiFi Rose and comparing that to the brand new RS130 Transport. Now the RS130 Transport has just been released here in the UK, now available to order and retailers have in stock. It was launched at the Munich high-end show, and we'd heard a rumour that there was going to be a couple of new products announced. The 130 was one of them. There was also a new HiFi Rose amplifier, which was more in keeping with the RS150B, for example, where you don't need quite so much front confusion, shall we say. Just trying to simplify more of a power amplifier design. It's still integrated, but without a lot of the pre-features, the phono stage and some of the styling looks. It's a lot more toned down. So that will be here, hopefully. I think it's called the RA280. Could be end of this year, maybe next year. I've got some photographs which I'll put in the feed in just a second as well. They also announced the RS130, which is the streaming transport, and this is exciting for a number of reasons. A lot of the user base that we've been servicing over the last sort of 12 months with HiFi Rose are headphone enthusiasts, as well as people with higher end systems, and they're looking at the best streaming platform that they can integrate into their 2-channel system with ease. Now, the RS150B ticks a number of boxes. It's discreet, it's all-in-one, it can be used as a preamp, sounds great, looks fantastic, has real eye appeal, but it comes at a price point which is $3,899. There are users out there and customers of ours out there with DACs that cost twice this amount, and they've been using this as a transport, or looking at, what is the roadmap for them simplifying their system down. And the answer may indeed be the RS130. So the RS130 is for the audio connoisseur, those with a higher end system, with a very capable DAC, capable of being connected to via USB, I2S, AES EBU, and those that are searching for, I guess, that audio nirvana. They're looking for a transport platform that's capable in terms of connectivity, fantastic range of network connectivity options. They're looking for a great design as far as power supply management and noise control that supports all the audio formats and streaming services, be it Tidal, Qobuz, Deezer, all the way up to DSD 512. And network attached storage or local SSD as well. Both of these units provide a lot of that. And also one where, I guess they're looking at a great interface, be it touchscreen. We do interact with the Rose units via the touchscreen, or if they're looking at connectivity with a really good app. And the HiFi Rose app, I'll put some screenshots up if you've never seen it before. It's very, very simple to use. It's very easy to navigate your own music. It's very easy to interact with not just the music side, but also the inputs and outputs, turning the screen on and off, changing audio source, dipping in between local playback music and then stream playback. A really great platform, and users would experience that on both of these. But again, the higher end market tends to be, I guess, a bit clunkier. There's a lot of great platforms out there with their own software, and I think where HiFi Rose have been really excelling in this domain is, their software people. Their primary business outside of making a 2-channel hi-fi is high-end point of sale and digital display, and therefore the software has to be reliable. It has to be easy to use. It has to be universally accepted. And that's what we've experienced as a HiFi Rose dealer, is actually very good software. There are limitations, like with all of these all-in-one platforms. People think that with this being Android-based, they can sideload anything on that they would like. That's not entirely the case. It's a Android-based OS that HiFi Rose have built with their own container. And with that, you can download apps from the Rose store, but don't expect to be able to load your own APK files onto there. That's an important point to note. So it's stable, it's locked down. It does have, you know, more than just the audio side. It has a visual side as well, be it via HDMI output to a display, to a TV, a projector, a monitor, or via the actual on-screen display itself. Again, more and more streamers are having those displays, but the reliability of this screen is what makes this a really awesome product. And we also have, you know, nice add-ons as far as the fiber hub. So first and foremost, let's have a look at the back of the two units. And for the sake of this video, we've got the RS130 here on top with the RS150B down low. And if we also have a quick look at the side panels and above the top, there are a couple of differences between the two units, which I'll come into in more detail later in the video. Namely, the top buttons in terms of control and the HiFi Rose detail on the top versus a very blank looking plate on the 150B. So what do we get with the RS130? Well, because it has no DAC, the first thing you should notice is there's no analog outputs whatsoever. And on the 150B, we have both balanced and unbalanced connectivity options. When we look at the outputs that are available on the 130, you'll notice first and foremost coaxial. You'll notice HDMI output via I2S. You'll notice AES EBU, optical. You'll also notice over here the actual I2S port, and there's two modes for that. I'll come on to that once we get into the software side. And then you've got the audio USB and a couple of USB 3 ports for things such as USB drives and the wireless dongle that it ships with. So you do still get the HDMI video output, as well as now a conformed standard I2S connection. And again, you can define if that's an A mode or a B mode, as HiFi Rose call it. And what you notice are the pins are reversed on pins 3 and 4, and 4 and 6, apologies, and 7 and 9. They're the differences on the A and B modes. You'll note that there's a circuit breaker on the 130, and that's not apparent on the 150B. And the other big change is the move from Ethernet connectivity and USB 3 fiber. So what we have now on the back are two SFP ports. SFP are a universal standard. They originated back in the networking industry. Small form SFP stands for small format pluggables, and with that you have an Ethernet SFP port, which could be Ethernet via Cat6, it could be Ethernet via long haul fiber or short haul fiber. You can buy the SFPs based on your connectivity within your home, and Ethernet connectivity is becoming a lot more relevant at the moment within the DAC and the streaming world, when we're trying to get away from traditional copper and moving towards fibre optic. Naturally, there is no electrical noise associated with fibre optic, so you massively get the gain of having no interaction with the Ethernet board with anything downstream that could be inherently quite noisy, be it a switch, a router, or a power line adapter. There's also the USB 3 fiber port, and this will allow any USB device as a source device to connect into the unit via fiber optic again. Now that's coming later in the year from HiFi Rose. It was launched at Munich at the high-end show a few months back, and we're waiting for a few more details on the price points and how that will ultimately interact with here. But right now, we can talk about the SFP port for Ethernet, because we know all about that. Worth noting, I guess, that with the two units, there are two different types of connections for wireless and Bluetooth. The small unit here is what comes with the RS150B, and this large USB port or USB Wi-Fi adapter is what ships normally with the RS520 and we're also now seeing it here on the RS130 as well. So one has to be mindful that this does take up quite a bit of space on the back of the unit, and in terms of how you angle this down, it's a bit of a pain. You can't rotate it too easily without it, as some customers have done, snapping the USB port at the back here. If you rotate this the other way, you can use the audio USB that we found and put it in an upright position, which makes a lot more sense when it's in a rack, because to have it this way is a bit of a pain. What I've also been offering customers, although we don't sell them ourselves, you can buy from Amazon a very cheap USB A to B sort of dock, and that will basically give you a short bendable lead from here and allow you to put the aerial up tall as well. Something that I think HiFi Rose do need to look at is their connectivity, because that is a real pain and something which we've fed back a few times before with both ourselves and customers damaging units in transit. However, if you come in via Ethernet, then your issues are resolved. You don't need to plug in the actual aerials themselves. The other thing that you'll notice, which is a bit different, is this external clock input. So should you have an actual control clock and you want to improve upon the timing, one can install either a 50 ohm or a 75 ohm external clock. It does have a very, very good oven baked, effectively 10 megahertz clock on board. That's one of the key differences again in the connectivity and the control platform from the RS150B to the 130. It's all about signal improvement and power supply adaptation. The clock is a significant part within a streamer and a transport of optimizing the downstream connectivity and timing of audio. So looking at the 150B, you'll see again a lot of a good amount actually of inputs and outputs. The 150B is a streaming preamplifier and DAC, and subsequently you do have AES EBU in, coaxial in, optical in, arc in, so you can bring your TV audio into this solution if you so desire. You then have a line in as well, analog line in, so you can bring in here a phono stage or a CD player, whatever's got an analog out in that respect coming in, and then you have AES EBU out. You have this I2S out, be it DVI or Ethernet. Was a bit of an interesting move, I think, back when the 150B came out. A lot happier now to see the standardized I2S output, and like I say, you then have a USB input which can connect to a computer, another streaming transport if you so desire, or something like the RSA780, the CD drive and ripper that comes with the that you can order for the Rose units. So that's all good. And then you've got your balanced outputs or your unbalanced outputs, and both are active at the same time. We sometimes use the unbalanced outputs to connect to subwoofers when we're using the balanced output to connect into our power amps or into our preamps. You then get a couple more USB ports, so you've got USB 3 ports, 3 of them. One of them is designated for the actual for the Wi-Fi dongle, and then you've got the HDMI port as well for your video out. The Ethernet is on board, which we see on 95% of streamers. It's only this year we start to see things a little bit different. But from a form point of view, both pretty much the same as far as width, depth and height. The 130 does feel physically heavier. I'll check the paperwork in a second and see what it actually weighs, but it definitely feels heavier, and that'll be down to the bigger capacitors one assumes in the linear power supply. So that's the back of the unit. We'll come around the front now. So here we've got the RS150B at the back and the 130 here at the front. The 150B has still got its plastic lining on, which is why it looks like it's scratched and very shiny. It's not the case. There's a plastic peel that's still on here. Try and keep our things in tip-top condition. So we have power button, volume up, volume down and mute on the right hand side of the 150B. The rest of the touchscreen is exactly that. The top of the surface is completely clear of any buttons. Whereas onto the 130, we have these, I'm not even sure if these are diamante or some other form of glass or crystal, but we've got the power on button, skip, play and pause, we've got mute, and then we've got home, back to the HiFi Rose app, which you normally see on a software button on the 150B. So there's a couple of little changes on the front end as far as the buttons are concerned. I do much prefer this. You know, you do then get a slightly larger screen. So there's a black border, which you can see that on the 150B, whereas the 130 is an edgeless screen. So from a real estate perspective, you do get more screen information, and you've not got the clunkiness of the video itself overlaid with touch buttons. So for the sake of transparency, the system we're going to build today is going to be the RS150B into the HiFi Rose RS130 amplifier. And then we're going to be using the Neat Acoustics, the orchestras, as our playback devices. As far as the DAC is concerned, obviously the 130 comes with no DAC, and the RS180 amplifier is pure analog only. So we're going to be using the Pro-Ject Audio DAC BOX RS2. We're going to be coming in via AES EBU. As far as the connectivity is concerned, it has a balanced power supply, a linear power supply that we'll be using. It does have I2S connectivity, as we can see here as well, and it has balanced XLR outputs, which will be feeding into the RS180. So we'll have a fully balanced architecture both ways. It's an ES Sabre 9038 Q2M DAC. So it's not quite in the same league as far as the flagship 9038 Pro, which is in the RS150B. However, that said, it does have a multi-core XMOS processor. It does have a few nice features on there, including valve output stage. So we're going to get to a point whereby a similar DAC to what's in the 150B, externally connected, balanced power supply, digital connectivity throughout to the 130. We're going to have a listen and systematically go through tracks and listen to spatiality, width, depth, height, projection of audio, etc. So this should be a good test in terms of a sort of £1,600 DAC with the Rose, comparing to the 150B. Of course, there are DACs out there, £10,000, £20,000, which you could absolutely connect into the transport, and that would give obviously a much bigger gain and a much better improvement. But for the sake of this video, we're looking at a similar DAC externally connected to the 130, and listen to what it provides versus an all-in-one unit, because that's the question that a lot of customers are asking. Why would I go to the 130 when I've got the 150B? What are the benefits, and what else would I have to invest in? That's what we'll do. We'll get this system up and running, and we'll have a good listen right now. Just one more thing that I wanted to talk about was the screen. Now, as you can see, the screen itself is bordered on the 150, and it's also bordered on the 130. But what I have noticed, and these are both with the brightness level turned up, is that there is significantly greater pixelation on the 150B. So it's quite difficult to get this to show here right now. Let's see if I can bring the brightness down. But the text isn't quite as sharp, and the information on the screen as far as flat 24 bits isn't anywhere near as clean as what it is on the 130. So with the 130 we end up with a bit more information as far as the playback is concerned. And if I can show this again, the text is a lot sharper. Now, the resolution's apparently the same. So I can't explain why one is significantly different to the other, but I have noticed the overall user interface is slightly different on the 130. The screen does take a little bit more pressing to get the same response. So I think there's also maybe a difference in screen. I've not had this confirmed yet. I will try and get some validation on this in due course. But the 130 playback, as far as the screen is concerned, is significantly cleaner. You don't see the pixelation. The text is much better laid out. Yeah, I think there is a significant difference there. So the big question is this worth it? Is the 130 plus a DAC better than the 150B? The easy answer is yes. It's not that much more expensive for the 130 over the 150B. It's £4,299 versus £3,899. You have to factor in the cost of the DAC. There's another interconnect cable that we're having to use as well. So from an overall system point of view, there's probably another £2,000 that I'm listening to here, with everything else being the same. However, the dynamic response was significantly better with the 130. Listening to the same 1 minute of Bob Dylan's Man in the Long Black Coat with the 150B gave a really good playback experience, and one that's always been, I guess, my flagship. It is my most expensive streamer that I have physically in the store at the moment. The 130 with the DAC just added so much more in terms of depth to the audio track itself. Much better bass response. That's the thing that really hit me the most, was there was so much more detail in the really low strings when he's playing the bass guitar at the entry. When the cymbals then crash and the harmonica comes in, I mean, the orchestras that I'm using here from Neat are very good speakers. They've got 40 hours on them, we're still burning them in. Nothing really changed in terms of the hours that I played from the 150 to the 130, but the actual height in that throw and the audio was significantly higher in the room. And I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting there to be less noise, maybe a slightly better dynamic range, but for the audio to be so much wider with the same tidal source was actually staggering. I was not expecting that same level of gain that we got from the 150B. The 150B is still a very convenient product. It's a product that is, high-end enough that most hi-fi systems that are looking to accommodate a £4,000 DAC streamer will take this, and you'd be super, super happy with it, and you'd never look back. But if you've already got an investment that you've made, or you're looking at changing the overall presentation of your system, and the best way to do that is with a DAC, then the 130 plus a DAC will give you so much more. And it just gives you that extra tunability of your system. And by that I mean, yes, you've got filters that you can implement here on the digital side. On other DACs, you've got multiple of the filters, analog output and digital filters. You've got upsampling. You've got a tube stage that we could introduce. You can really change the audio sound to be in keeping with what you like. And if you've got an environment or a system that would benefit from synchronization of the local clock, then you can bring an external clock as well. So your DAC and the clock onto the streamer can be synchronized. And that is something which, again, adds to its potential use cases if you've got a higher end system, or you've got a system in development where an external clock is going to be part of the overall the benefit. Now, both do have linear power supplies. I know on some of the Rose 130 marketing it talks about the superconductors within here, or the supercapacitor, should I say, sorry. There is a linear power supply in the 150B, but when you look at the circuit layout and the isolation from the input and then the modulation then to the actual DAC, it is a lot more congested in here. The thing that this is also doing, and we're not getting the benefit yet, is the Ethernet isolation and the fibre optic isolation. So should we want to bring in fibre optic Ethernet, and should we wish to connect our USB sources to really remove as much noise and vibration as possible, we have that option. So already it's better, but we know that if we were to add more to the system in due course, we would get a much, much nicer playback again. And that adds to the hi-fi adventure that we're all, I guess, undertaking right now, is we're all searching for our current nirvana, but the reality is we keep on changing the goalposts, and it's these higher end devices like the 130 that I think would satisfy a lot of the user base out there, given its capability. And you don't have to go, you know, really high end as well on day one. You know, there are great DACs out there for a couple of £100. The streaming interface, the interaction, the way in which you play your music is very, very good with a 130. So even a DAC at £200 will give you a very good listening experience, and then you've got that upgradability as well. So now herein lies the problem. What do we do next? We've got a brilliant all-in-one unit. We've got a fantastic transport. We have a wide array of external DACs and clocks we can use. What's next from HiFi Rose? This is completely unconfirmed, and this is just me speculating as a hi-fi dealer and somebody in the industry. But given that they're releasing a new amplifier to go with, let's say, the 150B, one can only assume that there will be a dedicated DAC for the 130 to give users, you know, a higher end listening experience within the HiFi Rose family. Who knows when that could come out, if it's ever going to come out, but that's what one assumes would be in the roadmap. The fiber hub that is due to come out in the next couple of months is all about connecting your external media into the 130 transport, and then obviously encoding that to fibre optic connectivity, thus taking the electronic signal path away from the 130 and taking as much noise away as possible. Same with Ethernet. I will do a little video on the SFPs. I've ordered a couple of units in just so I can show you what the different models are and what you would need to do in your home network to basically change the connectivity from Cat6 to the short connection fibre optics, and with that we'll look to list those on the website as well, just so you've got nice, all and easy, one place to shop for this type of stuff. We offer a home trial, so the 150B, the 520, the 250A, the 180, the 130, all of these units we're happy to package up and send down to you for you to experiment with. Just give us a shout on the telephone or drop me an email. More than happy to work through some ideas for you. Obviously we've got them in store for you to come and demo side by side as well, with a wider range of speakers. So yeah, if we can help in any way, shape or form, we are definitely here to accommodate you and hopefully give you an experience that leads you down the path of one of these fantastic products. But if you get any questions or comments or queries, please drop them down below. Drop me an email, lee@yorkshirav.co.uk. I'll do my best to respond as soon as possible. And yeah, hopefully look to get you on board with either the 150B or the 130. But if it was my system, I know where I'd be placing my money. Thank you for watching another video. The next video in this series is going to be all about neat acoustics. And as I've been showcasing today, the orchestras, we are now a neat acoustics dealer, and we'll be showcasing some of our passive speakers that we've got in the store and how we're using systems such as these to really showcase what these brilliant speakers are capable of. Thank you, and until next time, goodbye.